Welcome to Lessons from Peru. Today I will explain with evidence that the so-called ancient sites, prehistoric, Neolithic, two such sites in Peru are fakes, just like all the others on this planet. Fakes built by the Western European aristocrats who already numbered in the millions 2 centuries ago. They certainly had the numbers, the technology, and the resources to pull off this stunt, this mind-bending stunt, what else to call it? Gigantic hoax, worldwide hoax. Why? Not for money, although these sites do generate money. Not so much to distract us from anything important, although they do distract us from more important things. Not for power. They have plenty of both power and money. They don't need more. I think their primary motive is self-entertainment. They are sadists, absolute sadists. They take pleasure in deceiving us, seeing us run around, gawking at fake objects, fake fortresses, fake pyramids, dreaming that somehow civilization is what they told us it is. So today I'll share some a chapter from the Encyclopedia Comedia, some images, and some bits from little videos. Let's begin with my notes, with my chapter in, again, the Encyclopedia Comedia. The UNESCO World Heritage Site, Machu Picchu, is a megalithic and supposedly Neolithic settlement perched on the Peruvian mountains. It is visited by 1.5 million gullible people per year. It's considered an architectural wonder of the Inca peoples, who, despite having neither iron nor wheels, somehow shaped enormous stones into a perfect puzzle and shaped over 5 hectares into narrow, flat terraces for agriculture, all 2,400 meters above sea level on a rather small mountaintop. What kind of crops can grow at that altitude? Root vegetables and grains, yes. The Incas, who supposedly ruled an empire, wanted to eat roots and grains on a nearly inaccessible mountaintop. Makes perfect sense. Let's have a quick look at one of the images I want to share. Here you go. Here we go. Machu Picchu. Lovely remains of a supposedly once inhabited settlement on a nearly impossible to access mountaintop. There are supposedly residences here, homes, houses. None of them have roofs. All of them seem to have just the roofs missing. The walls on the tops don't show much deterioration, as if The roofs just blew away yesterday. It's a little more deterioration here and there. It's been cleaned up very nicely, I'm sure, but it's suspicious how it's weathered very, it's weathered very equally. Here's one of the walls. Hey, give me the right wall. Playing tricks with me. Famously, some of the best walls at Machu Picchu, there it is, have the most baffling and difficult stonework at the bottom, and become more simple and primitive as we rise, as the wall rises, as if the builders somehow lost all their knowledge and skills and tools in the process of building this wall. You have to recognize a joke when you see it. Yeah. And for what purpose did they create these strange jigsaw shapes? Arguably, it's to create a more stable wall, but it could have been done a little more regularly. It seems like they were just showing off and creating mystery for no purpose except to tease us. Why would anyone invest so much effort into living in an inhospitable environment? 2,400 meters above sea level is precisely the point at which altitude sickness is common among climbers. I guess you could argue that's a good defensive point. Yeah, you don't want your enemies to be able to breathe when they reach you. Yeah. All right. Well, why do almost none of Machu Picchu's 200 buildings have roofs and no evidence that stone roofs ever collapsed? Did the Incas have amazing stone cutting skills, but not the skill to build tiered stone roofs or arches or pillars, and not the skill to build domes? Why are many of the megalithic blocks asymmetrical yet made to fit as perfect as a jigsaw puzzle? Did some crazy masons want to impress us, mystify us? Why do some of the walls exhibit extremely advanced masonry skills at the bottom, while successive layers above it become less advanced? Who created the name Machu Picchu? Funny name. Should we treat it as a polyglot hint? I think so. Machu sounds like macho, which is Spanish for excessive pride in one's masculinity, and picha is Turkish for crazy. Sounds like an appropriate name for a crazy site built by a class of people determined to mock us and waste our time. Of course, the fact that both words require only a change to the last vowel, that's mere coincidence. And the fact that the translated name is appropriate is also mere coincidence. You know, there's something very macho about building something with maybe excessively large stones. Yeah. Yeah, you want those little ones on top so they can rattle and move when there's an earthquake. No cement. No, the whole place was built without cement. Geniuses. Lastly, the site's Temple of the Sun has 2 windows aligned with the winter and summer equinoxes. On those 2 days, the sun's light passes through one of the windows onto a boulder lodged in the ground within the building, just like the stone in the Dome of the Rock's floor in Jerusalem. But Machu Picchu's rock seems intended as an altar, and scholars noted that on both the winter and summer equinoxes, the sun shines through a window but can only be seen if one's eyes are 40 centimeters above the low altar. You almost have to lie on that altar. Hint, hint. That's not coincidental. The Masons knew that sunlight is used to cook sacrificial humans, maybe not on altars, as I've argued differently in other lectures. In Peru, the lesser known site known as Kuelap Fortress of the Chachapoyas, excuse me, is equally ridiculous and curious. At 3,000 meters above sea level, it sits well above the comfortable breathing zone for visitors from lower altitudes. It is surrounded by an enormous wall. So arguably it's defensive structure, but the interior ground level is raised, so anyone inside can almost step onto the wall. Incredibly, although Kuelap is very similar to Machu Picchu, instead of being credited to the Incas, it is credited to the Chachapoyas, who reputedly built it 1,000 years before Machu Picchu, and who reputedly built it to escape from war. Although centuries later, after the Incas built Machu Picchu, presumably for the same reason, the Chachapoyas were terrified of the Inca. Yeah, they're both living on mountaintops, but one is terrified that the other might attack them. Claims that Kuelap is a defensive structure are actually funny. Would Inca rulers care that one tiny mountaintop was occupied by crazy Chachapoyas living like them, or some of them, in their almost impenetrable fortress, while thousands of other mountaintops remained unoccupied, and the Chachapoyas seemed incapable of building a second fortress, let alone a competing empire? No, but we're led to believe that the Chachapoyas were afraid of the Incas. Another silly mystery concerns the Kuelap cliffs, in which small niches were made into which upright sarcophagi were placed. Anthropologists are unable to imagine how this was done without modern climbing and lifting equipment. Yes, but we know that, of course, we know that the European aristocrats, the WCC, I call them, already had, they had airships with which to do all this work, to move stones, to, to hang in midair beside cliffs and do work on those cliffs. No lifting equipment other than their airships were needed. No climbing equipment was needed. But the experts, despite not being able to imagine how the work was done on the cliffside, sheer vertical cliffs, somehow easily imagined that the Chachapoya people were mountain warriors who dragged massive stones up the mountainside to build Kuelap Fortress 1,000 years before the Incas did it. For what purpose? Defense, they tell us, to protect themselves from mountain pacas and mountain lions. Joking. Historians believe the imaginary Incas frightened the imaginary Chachapoyas out of the valleys and into the clouds. They say the Incas frightened the Chachapoyas so much that the Chachas gladly allied with the Spaniards when the Spaniards finally showed up. Imagine that. What were Spaniards doing at 3,000 meters above sea level? Looking for Spain, maybe? Let's have a look at some more visuals. Here we have something to do with...
There is a fortress in Peru that almost...
A great mega fortress of... What did I call it? Already slipped my mind. Kuelap. Yeah, we've seen similar fortresses in my presentation on Fortress World. But this one, and maybe others too, were never used. This looks actually different. I thought there were many, many more circular dwellings. This is only part of it.
Nobody has heard of. It contains 4 times the stone of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The people who built it had no wheels, no draft animals, no roads, no empire, and no explanation for how they did it has ever fully held up. The mainstream story calls them a simple mountain culture, isolated, primitive, building for defense. Then you look at what they actually built, and the simple story falls apart. This is Kuelap, and once you understand what it really is, you won't be able to stop thinking about it. High above the cloud forests of northern Peru stands a structure that should not exist. Its walls rise nearly 20 meters into the air. Its defenses stretch across an entire mountain ridge. And for centuries, thousands of people lived behind those walls. It is one of the largest fortresses ever built in the Americas, and almost nobody has heard of it. That silence is itself the first mystery. Mainstream archaeology has an answer for Kuelap. The Chachapoya people built it, beginning sometime around 900 AD, using the same stone tools and manual labor that produced...
That's the same nonsense we get with Egypt. And yeah, here is some images of video footage of people checking out the sarcophagi. On the cliffside of this site. He's going to find skeletons in some caves, as well as we'll see the upright sarcophagi. Yes, bones remains, not properly buried. No, just scattered by the jokers. Cave people lived there, yes. What else should we surmise, infer? Not many bones, just a few. Looks like the jokers put some, did some brickwork on this, stonework on this cliffside too. Another cave with human remains. But yeah, there's much more. But really, we're not talking about thousands. Let me get an image of the sarcophagi and move on. Where are they? Yeah, very fascinating. Okay. Well, they seem to have disappeared from this video. That's too bad. How did that happen? I must be dreaming. Where are you? No, nothing here. Well, it's not easy to organize all this. This now where I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get here later. This is in Lima. Let me continue a little more from the Encyclopedia Comedia. Numbers associated with the Kuelap site, I correct myself, are also suspicious. Kuelap Fortress Lower Town has 335 structures, which coincidentally reduces to Masonic number 11, while the High or Inner Town has 83 structures, which coincidentally reduces to Masonic number 11. But of those 83, 3 are rectangular, leaving 80 circular ones, and 80 reduces to 18, which is code for 666. Yeah, these people had way too much time on their hands. Well, who built Machu Picchu and Kuelap Fortress? The same people who built colonial Lima. And those people were European aristocrats. How did they build them? With slaves, airships, and secret tech. Why did they build them? To distract us from the real crime scene in colonial Lima, and to fill us with nonsense about people living on mountaintops, when in reality our ancestors, the first humans, lived peacefully in the valleys where air is plentiful and food is easy to produce. Let's have a look at Lima, where our attention really should be, if anywhere. It's not a distraction. Well, it's less of a distraction. And I use this image for my cover. This is beneath the cathedral and monastery of Saint Francis in Lima, Peru. The San Francisco Cathedral, also known as. Yeah, you see how much they cared about the dead, those supposed Catholics, no, not Catholics, cannibals. Yes, they decided to use people's skulls and femurs to create pretty patterns. How's that for respecting the dead? One moment.
We are a country with great potential for tourism, and the capital has beautiful places to visit. Existed until 1842 to 1845, when it was finally closed. The underground construction is admirable.
Each column is one.
This is the catacombs underneath St. Francis Cathedral and Monastery. It's a huge structure.
0.30 wide, old bricks, sand, long stone, or the mixture they made with pelican egg. They have up to 3 levels. Here we are in the lower part of the temple,
but the central part. In other words, the faithful are above. Sure, sure.
Another nicely organized bones. I wonder if they put the names on the, what shall we call the persons to whom these bones belonged? No.
Keep listening to the Mass.
At every step, there's valuable information. There
are no columns here, only bovines. Because of their structure, they act as columns.
Visited by hundreds of international tourists, mostly, being here is quite an experience.
On this side, you can already see the church. There is the gate, there are the steps.
Steps covered with, and there's the gate. Is that a gate? No, that's a trap door that looks like a gate. Yeah, this was not designed for easy access or easy exit. No, this is a subterranean prison farm.
A pit with hundreds of remains leaves a gap open to anyone.
The mass grave is supported entirely by the arch. It is 10 meters deep by 5 meters wide.
Yeah, and mostly empty. What was its true purpose? It makes you wonder, was that the feeding trough for the slaves? For the human cattle? The cathedral itself is, of course, awe-inspiring as it's meant to be. It's meant to cast a spell on the cannibals themselves and the victims who were marched into these structures. Yeah, someone did very good photo essay on the structure. Is this the same one? I think this is a smaller one. This is the Metropolitan Cathedral. It's, as I say, smaller, and it's full of beautiful carvings. I hesitate to use the word beautiful, but they're all carved out of dark hardwood, no doubt harvested from living trees. That should be a sin. Full of this dark wood. And we'll look at this in a moment. Yeah, some of the vests used before this place became a church, a true cathedral, I suspect. All right, a few more notes to read. This will be a short presentation today. All right, let me share my screen, a different screen. This is in my book now. We have these 3 carvings. The one on the left is curious. We have presumably a monk, but no, this is something else. His head in front of a plate. I call it a plate for an important reason. And holding the hand of a young child who is carrying a basket full of builder's tools. Oh, come back. Yeah, like he's a little mason. Oh, come back. And in the center, we have another saint-like person wielding in one hand a carving knife. Let's call it what it is. Lovely carving knife. And in the other hand, he's holding a chain, attached to the neck of a demon with, please note, bat wings. A demon with bat wings. Well, bats live in caves, underground sometimes. And another strange looking man here with the plate behind his head, holding this unusual object, similar to what I showed in a painting by Caravaggio. Reminds me of that object. I think it's not a dagger, it's not a scepter. I suspect it's a stylized, somewhat ornamental hypodermic needle, rather large, for removing and injecting blood from sacrificial humans, probably children. And here are 3 more pictures. A statue from the same cathedral of presumably a saint, but in no way a saint, we assume, yes. The saint is holding, I suppose it's meant to be the Sacred Heart of Jesus in one hand. And standing on the head of a man with 1 foot. How saintly is that? Yes, we've been misunderstanding our beautiful cathedrals. And here, a very special image of a very special crucifixion. Jesus nailed through both feet separately and appearing to have bat wings. Well, he's not Jesus, he's just a sacrificial man. And the bat wings imply that, well, they do extend beyond his arms, but they do look a lot like bat wings. And not by coincidence, I think, we did have, the same cathedral has a demon with bat wings. Yes, these are men who were farmed underground. And they're not treated as humans. They're not treated as animals, mere bats, sheep, cattle. That image has shifted into another chapter. I have to work on that. Crazy Microsoft Word. I think I have some other images to share. Yes, those sarcophagi. Let's have a quick look before we wrap up. This is again from the catacombs. By the way, I just cracked that word today. Kata is Greek for below or low. And, well, we've all heard of the other part of that word, catacomb, comb with a B. How strange, in no other Germanic language does the word comb refer to a beehive or anything underground. They are simply grooming devices. So what possessed the creators of the English language to borrow that word and attach it to kata and apply it to beehives and honeycombs? Well, it all makes sense when you understand subterranean farming narrative, history, the past. You see, by applying this word comb to honeycombs, it means that Now the comb is a, a structure in which animals, in this case bees, reproduce, raise their young, feed their young. And that is precisely what happens or happened in catacombs. They were places where humans were raised and fed to be eaten like honey from the honeycomb. Yes, this is the land of milk and honey, as the Bible says. Complex, very complex wordplay happening, but not something worth emulating, as it all boils down to people trying to, the cannibals hiding the truth in complex word games. It's not really free-minded wordplay. No, they must keep the truth occulted. Here is the image of the so-called sarcophagi. Yes, they supposedly buried people in these things, buried their dead, and then decided to somehow, by defying gravity, place them on the cliffside, on ledges, not lying down, but standing up as if, as if maybe they had Easter Islands in mind. Very similar. Of course, similar. It's all the same. Sick people producing this nonsense for their entertainment. And while I was doing the research on Kuelap, I hope I pronounced that correctly, I heard, as another tour guide was explaining, that the site was allegedly, according to Spanish chroniclers, built by white-haired, tall, white-haired, pale-skinned, white-skinned people. And yes, I know, that reminded me that there are similar rumors, myths about what's his name, Quetzalcoatl, that Mexican god, flying serpent, feathered serpent, was supposed to be light-skinned and bearded. And in Polynesia as well, early European explorers, no, the aristocrats, the cannibals, recorded, no, invented oral traditions claiming that pale-skinned, fair-haired, bearded demigods settled the Pacific Islands and established early societies, and so on. In North America, the mound builder myth is also connected to a lost race of white men who reputedly built those mounds. Oh yes, they're building mounds, simple earthen mounds in North America. They're building on mountaintops with megaliths on. No, they can't resist, of course, giving us some clues as to who they are. Mostly, of course, to their great amusement, these clues are rejected by professional anthropologists and historians. Alas, they are wrong. It's at these hints in Spanish chronicles and fake myths, oral traditions are actually true. Yeah, the white gods, Wikipedia, there's Quetzalcoatl. Not sure I pronounced that correctly. I do live in Quetzalcoatl's homeland, but it hasn't helped too much. No, I'm not picking up much Spanish. Somehow, too busy. Well, what do we make of all this? I think we have to keep in mind that we are ruled by people who have enormous resources, enormous numbers, not more than ours, but more than enough for their purposes. And these people, to a great extent, are ruling the world primarily as a circus for themselves, as pure entertainment. They really don't care if people get hurt in this circus, if billions suffer daily. No, this is their pleasure. They are sadists through and through, as I argued or assumed in my presentation, Psychology 101. And there's really no other way to understand what's happening except as a circus of sadism. Should you be interested in my work, please contact me. You can reach me at Prophet of Fiction at proton.me. I do have some books available now on lulu.com.